In China, there's a saying that women hold up half the sky, but that's not the reality. In many parts of the world, women and girls are more likely to be the targets of human trafficking, mass rape, and more. Still, the world is awakening to a powerful truth. Women and girls aren't the problem, they're the solution. Consider Saima Muhammad, who lives in a slum in the Pakistani city of Lahore. Saima's husband, who was unemployed and had accumulated a debt of more than $3,000, frequently beat her, and then Saima produced 2 daughters. She was scorned for her failure to have a son, and her husband considered getting a second wife. At about that time, Saima signed up with a microfinance organization that lends money to small groups of women. Saima borrowed $65 to buy beads and cloth to start an embroidery business. She sold her work to local merchants and used the profit to buy more materials. Soon she had more orders than she could handle, and she began to employ her neighbors, and even her husband, to help with the work. Many aid groups are now following this model because they find that is where they get the greatest bang for the buck. In Burundi, which by some calculations is the poorest country in the entire world, Goretti Nyabenda was once largely a prisoner in her own hut. She couldn't leave without her husband's permission. She was illiterate, she had never touched money, and she was deeply unhappy. Then Goretti joined an empowerment group supported by CARE. Goretti borrowed $2 to buy fertilizer that produced an excellent crop of potatoes. Then Goretti started a business making banana beer, and with the profits from that, she bought a pregnant goat. She became the main financial resource for the family. And now she leaves the house freely and is a pillar of the community. And that program cost CARE 65 cents a week per person. It's effective foreign aid. Aid sometimes takes a more direct route, as in the case of Claudine Mukakarisa. A survivor of the genocide in Rwanda, Claudine lived through unspeakable horrors. She and her sister were kidnapped and held captive in a rape house, and the sister was then killed. When Claudine was finally released, she was pregnant, 13 years old, and completely by herself. Her entire family had been killed, and she gave birth to her son alone in a parking lot. Claudine got help through Women for Women International, an American-based aid group that connects donors to the needy in poor countries. The group linked Claudine to Merveline Clark, a bank employee who lives in Brooklyn. Merveline sent $27 a month, a sum that enabled Claudine to send her children to school, pursue her own education, and learn a craft. Merveline, who kept up the payments even when she was laid off, transformed what had once seemed a hopeless situation for Claudine. Now, one of the greatest challenges for women around the world is maternal mortality. Around the world, 1 woman dies in childbirth every minute. Yet we know how to save these lives, and some people are working heroically to save them. One of my heroes is Edna Adan, a Somali woman who was her country's first educated woman and first nurse midwife. Edna served a career as a UN official, but her dream was to start a hospital in her native area, Somaliland. And so she did. Edna sold her car and used her savings to start the incredible Edna Adan Maternity Hospital. She lives on the top floor so that she is on call 24/7, and she receives no salary. On the contrary, she uses her UN pension to fund the hospital, along with the support of a group of donors from America. Now, another area we know where there can be progress in is sex trafficking. Abbas Bey is the face of that progress. Abbas comes from a poor family in the Indian city of Hyderabad. When she was about 14, her family arranged for her to take a job as a maid in the capital city of Delhi. Instead, Abbas was locked in a brothel, beaten with a bat, and forced to cater to customers. Eventually, Abbas was freed by police and taken back to Hyderabad, where she found a home and a shelter run by Prajwala, a local organization that assists girls like Abbas. She's now getting an education and has been trained as a bookbinder, a skill that will allow her to make a decent living. Abbas is a reminder that we don't need to accept girls enslaved in brothels or dying in childbirth or left on their own. Given a hand, they can get an education and become productive. They're the best weapon against poverty and extremism. Women and girls aren't the problem, they're the solution, and they can hold up half the sky. For the New York Times, I'm Nicholas Kristof.